Hello and welcome back for the next video in the Dominion video tutorial series. In the videos leading up to this, I've established a set of guidelines for most games of Dominion. People ask, what's my strategy? How do I approach a given board of Dominion? And a lot of these rules apply to a lot of those games, right? You have your priorities in the early game, trashing and junking, and that moves towards gainers, then draw, then other payload, and then you want to build a good deck that has good turns, trash the bad cards, put the good cards in, and do good stuff, right? These are generic things about games of Dominion that you want to do. As I've mentioned before, there's an exception to everything I say, and of course, all those things are guidelines, and they're not hard and fast rules. But the main sort of exceptions that I want to talk about in this video are combo decks. The way I'm defining combo deck is really anything that makes you break those rules, but combo decks also have to consist of just two cards that together between those two cards will make you break those rules. Throw it all out the window, and now you're playing a game that revolves around those two cards, the combo of those two cards. Why is it two? Well, I mean, there's like 400 Kingdom cards in Dominion, so like if you ever really want to see them in a random setup or a non-designed board, I mean, the two-card ones are the only ones that have a realistic chance of happening unless you make it that way. So the two-card ones are definitely a lot more worth talking about. Now, there may be combinations of more than two cards that also make you throw out those rules, and certainly don't ignore that. But the ones with two cards are here. Now, I've divided them into two tiers. The tier 1 combos are just so incredibly powerful that I really can't think of many boards where you are not just doing that deck and just looking for support for that deck. The synergy between each of those pairs of cards is so strong that the game will be about that unless there is a hard counter present, and in many cases there just isn't a hard counter. I should say now that there are articles on every single one of these combo decks. There are going to be two links in the description, one for combos and then the next for the powerful cards, which is the next part of this video. You can click on those links and it'll take you to a page with links to articles for all of these that will go in depth as much as you want. And I would certainly recommend reading up on those. I have a soft spot in my mind for combos, and so I really like writing about them. A lot of them are written by me, some of them aren't, but all of them have my seal of approval. I think there's good advice in there. Great. The tier 2 combos, there is usually a little bit more counterplay, but still they're good enough that they're a force to be reckoned with, and you need something really, really good to ignore it. And past that, you really need to think about how you're going to play against those decks. These decks will have some vulnerabilities. They're not perfect, but their potential is so good that unless you exploit those vulnerabilities, then they're going to probably beat you because they are strong enough to do that. More detail about that, obviously, in the articles there. These are the combos. I actually think that they're worth practicing, and I have practiced a lot of them. Because if they come up, the way these decks plays is just so different than other decks in Dominion. And what you're looking for is really different, and what you care about is really different. I think it's worth playing a game or two because you'll get your feet under you, and you're going to play a lot better with all of these. It's very easy to fall flat on your face with many of these decks, especially the more complex ones. I'm thinking off the top of my head, Hermit Market Square and Counting House Night Watchman are very complex decks to play. It is very easy to fail and fall flat on your face. So it's worth practicing. The next thing I want to talk about in this video are the most powerful cards. Now, what does powerful mean? What does it mean for a card to be good? I don't have a solid airtight definition for that like I do for most of the other definitions in this tutorial series. What I will say is that they're really good. You should probably not ignore them, and I'm going to not be more specific than that. Anyway, I've done some stats about card ratings, and while I think there's very limited usefulness you can get out of that, one of the useful things is I can look at the top 10% or so of cards and I can recognize that, these cards are considered to be the most powerful cards by a lot of different people who are using a lot of different criteria to decide that these are the most powerful cards. And so when you see these cards on a board, they should make alarm bells go off. I see this card, that's going to be a force to reckon with. I either need to incorporate that in my strategy or have a very, very good reason for not doing that and maybe playing to counter whatever's going on there. So these cards all have short articles. I call them bite-sized articles written about them, 300 words or less, and just telling you why they're powerful and what kind of decks you can put them in. There will be a link in the description to a page that has links to all of these. And in many of the cases, these cards have more in-depth articles written about them. So in the case where there is a more in-depth article written about one of these cards that I think is actually a good article, the bite-sized article will link to that more in-depth article in case you want some more detail. So these cards, they don't necessarily make you throw out all the rules of deck building I've talked about, but they aren't really rules of deck building, right? They're more like guidelines. And, the lines blur between these things. And I would say the most powerful cards, like the ones you're seeing right here, are the ones that cause you to blur the lines and maybe muck with the order a little bit more often. So just because a card doesn't appear on this list doesn't mean it's not going to be powerful in a certain board. It's just that these cards are just usually very powerful in a vast majority of boards where they appear. And so they're worth a little bit more of your attention. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.